All right, test one. Hello, Techniques of Instruction class. My name is Carson Street. My subject that I'm talking about today is night operations. So the way I'm going to do it is that if I started over and did takes for every time I messed up or said or had a pause, I'd be here all day. So I'm going to just shoot it in one take. And if I stutter, or I skip over a word, I'll correct myself. Also, another thing. So I'm going to be teaching as if the student is in front of me on the other side of my desk, so I'd be able to show them pictures of the beacons, of the VASIs and the PAPIs, and show them the anatomy of the eye. So, just wanted to make that clear that I have all that here. It's right here. And if you were right there, I could turn around and show it to you. So if I'm looking down or if I'm reading a definition on an illusion, that's what I'm looking at. I got books right here to reference. So starting out with my objective statement, I would not normally say this to a student, but since most of us are instructors here, it reads, to provide a solid base of knowledge for the differences of night, including aeromedical factors, illusions, and emergencies. I also have the reference material listed, which is going to be Chapter 10 of the Airplane Flying Handbook, of which this is, and 4-32 and 4-33 of the Jepson Private Pilot book. Also, I did reference the FAR-AIM for night logging and currency. So why do we want to learn night? Well, we want to learn night because we're going to be flying a lot at night, whether you're an instructor and you've got to teach your student to fly at night, or if you're commercial and you're taking passengers to and from during the night. Many things change, some better, some worse. Pros of flying at night are going to be that the temperature is usually going to be cooler, so you're going to get better performance. There's going to be less traffic over the radios as well at the airports, and you're not going to get as uneven of heating on the ground, so you're going to have less turbulence. Everybody loves that. So I really enjoy flying at night. I'm sure you do. But we have to remember that at the beginning, it was so much different. I remember the first time I went flying at night and just thinking, how am I going to know that, how high I am or where the ground is, or can I see the ground? And it's a very exciting experience. I'm sure you remember your first night flight. Anyway, sorry. Back to student, teacher. Okay, so night. So night to the FAA, is a couple different things. So for logging it, it has to be the time between the end of evening civil twilight and the beginning of morning civil twilight. There is a diagram I have here of the horizon, and then as the sun drops below the horizon, it's called different things. So, right, it's down there, actually. So 0 to 6 degrees below the horizon is actually evening civil twilight. So that is for you to log night. And then, but also to stay current, for FAR 61.57, it's going to be 1 hour after sunset and 1 hour before sunrise. Now, to be current, you need to do 3 takeoffs and 3 landings in the preceding 90 days in the same category, class, and type of aircraft. Moving on to some changes at night. So, for example, at TSTC, our Delta changed to Echo after midnight. So you always want to make sure and actually look for, I want to say, physical changes during night. Equipment. So I broke equipment up into 2 things. One for the pilot and then one for the plane. So I know that helped me for night flights was a headlamp. It frees up your hands to hold the checklist and check anything you need to, sip the fuel, work the panel, whatever. Climb on top of the airplane so you don't have to hold your checklist and your flashlight in the other hand and trying to get up on this Cessna to see where if you can see the fuel. So a headlamp. A headlamp that also changes colors for the light is also very helpful, because we'll get into, I guess we can talk about it now. Red light is way less damaging on your night vision than white light or yellow light. I can't remember if it's white or yellow. But red, so whenever you see Huey pilots whenever you see pilots in Hueys in Vietnam movies and they're using a red light, or they're on the ground, they're using a red light, that it keeps your night vision, so it doesn't glare off the page and into your eyes, or if you were to actually look into it accidentally, it doesn't blind you as bad. It doesn't damage your night vision as good. It's worse. So, headlamp, hopefully with a red light setting, and then extra batteries. I was actually pre-flighting one night at TSTC, and my headlight did not die, but it was going down, so it wasn't as bright, and I was just about to go on a long cross country, and I had luckily put batteries in my bag, so pulled them out, switched them, bright as can be, and I was very happy about it. So I would advise you to bring extra batteries for your headlamp or your flashlight. Now, on to the equipment of the plane. So, per 91205 that we're all familiar with, and we all have what seems like a different acronym to memorize, your fuses, you're going to need 3 of each kind or a whole set. Your landing light for higher, your anti-collision light, position lights, and then source power. So, you just got to remember 91205, also your personal equipment for your pilot that I went over, and then actually look for physical changes at night, like airspace changes. Onto aeromedical. So, if you were here, I could show you a cutout of the eye, and you can see the anatomy of the eye. What I want to cover about it is cones, rods, and rhodopsin. So cones are actually like what we look at, what we focus on. It detects color, very good at details, far away objects. When you stare at something, that's what the middle of your stare, that you're using cones to view that. Rods, on the other hand, are the corner of your eye. So they detect movement very well, but they're less in about detail, and they're more about sensitivity of movement. So a good example of this, or if you want to try this, we did this in my motorcycle safety class, is that you stand perfectly still and you look straight ahead and you focus on a point. And you look at it. You're not just looking straight ahead, you're focusing on a point, and they bring up a pretty big and large like playing card, and they ask you what color it is. You know, it's either red or blue usually, or red or black, excuse me. And you cannot tell. I guessed the wrong color. I think I said red, and it was black. I mean, I could see it. I could see it moving, but I couldn't see the color, which was pretty cool. So, if you want to try that, it's pretty interesting. So, rhodopsin. Rhodopsin is also found in the rods. So, rhodopsin is the key to our night vision. Bright light breaks it down. So, during the day, I've got this window open right here, all this light coming in. I don't really have much, if any, rhodopsin production in my eyes. But at night, the rhodopsin molecules start to multiply, and they're what actually give you night vision. Let's see, make sure I covered everything. So, after 10 minutes of darkness, this is just some facts, so I'm going to be reading it word for word. After 10 minutes of darkness, eyes are 100 times more sensitive to light. After 30 minutes, which is going to be just about as much rhodopsin as you're going to produce in 30 minutes of darkness, that's going to be 100 times more sensitive. And then also, something I forgot to mention while we're on aeromedical factors is that your vision is very sensitive to your oxygen intake. So, I forget what book it mentions it in, but as low as 5,000 feet, your vision can be affected by less oxygen you're taking in. So that needs to be in your mind. So moving on to airport lighting, very important. it's always a great feeling to go on a long night cross country and then come home and you see your airport and it's just lit up like a Christmas tree to where it's real defined. It was always a comforting feeling to me to come home at an airport that I knew and trained at and see everything lit up. So VASI, a visual approach slope indicator. If you look at 432 in the Jeppesen book, you can see that there's two types of VASIs that I want to cover. First is just the regular VASI, where there's going to be different rows, and on those rows are going to be different colors. So if you have two white bars or two rows of lights that are white, you're going to be too high. If you have two bars of red lights, you're going to be too low. And then if you have a red over a white bar, you're going to be right on glide slope. So that's very helpful for judging your glide slope at night, especially into airports that you're not as familiar with. Then we also have the tricolor VASI. Now the tricolor VASI is going to be one single light row that is going to change colors as you come down. So if you have your glide slope like that, as you're coming down, it's going to be yellow above glide slope, green on glide slope, and then go to yellow briefly, and then to red if you're below the glide slope. Now, onto a PAPI. Now, a PAPI is going to be just one single row of lights that is going to change colors, as you come down the glide slope. So if they're all white, they're just single row, and let's say there's 4 lights. So if you have 4 white, again, you're going to be high. If you have split 2 red, 2 white, you're going to be right on glide slope. If they're all red, you're going to be very low. If 3 are red, 1 is white, you're only going to be slightly low. And then if you're going to have 3 white and 1 red, you're going to be just slightly high. Let's see, what else do we want to cover? Oh, something really cool, pilot control lighting. So at certain airports, on the CTAF frequency, you can key your mic. So if you key it 3 times, it'll have like the lowest light setting, and then 5 a medium, and then 7 clicks on your talk button or your broadcast button. It's going to be the highest light setting, which is pretty cool. So if they're too bright for you, you can lower them or just customize them to your preference. Obstruction lighting, also very important. So usually it's going to be high intensity red or white, usually flashing on light towers, buildings, power lines, stuff like that. Always have a taxi diagram. Always. Even if you're at TSTC, I was at TSC. Even if you are at your home airport and you've done it, 100 times and you know exactly where you are, that taxi diagram is just going to give you that much more confidence, that much more situational awareness, especially if you have it on your iPad for ForeFlight. It's going to show you exactly where you are, and you shouldn't rely on that. Let me just add that. But, as it shows you taxiing down the taxiways, you can, you need to check it, look out, okay, I'm passing this taxiway, it's right here, I'm right there, that dot shows right there. So, and then also just be familiar with all of the airport lighting. I'm not going to go over it now, but just what color lights are going to be on the taxiway versus the runway. If you look at a runway from the opposite end, is it going to be different? The last couple thousand feet of the runway, what's different about that? Just be familiar with lighting on the runway. Getting into beacons. So again, back to the Jeppesen book on page 4-32. I really like this for talking about the beacons. So a civilian beacon, I didn't explain. Normally the beacon is going to be the first thing that you see coming into an airport, especially in metropolitan areas where there's a lot of lights, a lot of traffic, a lot of blinking lights anyway. You'll be able to see a rotating beacon, and it's going to stand out to you. So for civilian land airport, it's going to be a white beacon and a green beacon. So that it's just going to be rotating in white and green. Military is going to be green plus 2 white. And then a water airport for seaplanes is going to be yellow and white. And then a heliport is going to be green and white on the sides with yellow on the top. Okay, now going into a new subject, navigation. Excuse me. Tripping on my words, navigation. So, less visual cues and references and more reliance on instruments. So, you're not going to be able to tell as much from, where the horizon kind of sits in relation to your sight picture, and, if you can hold the exact altitude just by, looking out the window. It's going to be more checking your instruments. Also, more navigation changes. Some things are better, some things are worse at night. So, like cities are actually going to be better, at least for me, at night, because on a sectional you have that outline of yellow where the main cluster of lights are and the shape that it produces. That's a lot easier to identify at night than it is in the daytime. Another thing is lakes. Lakes are going to be a lot better during the day than at night. Railroads, unless you can see a train coming down it and you're really low in altitude, you're not going to be able to see a railroad distinctively enough to say, okay, that's where it is, that's where I am, this is where I need to be. So, just be thinking about that. Spotting the clouds and clouds layers and areas of reduced visibility are going to be harder at night. You may not even know that you're in it, and you could just be flying and all of a sudden you see a glow or a halo around the lights of your aircraft. That's when you know, hey, I could be flying into a cloud bank, I could be flying into an area of reduced visibility, mist, fog. So that's just something to be on the lookout for. If you're flying and all of a sudden your light just starts to expand, kind of like the brightness of it does, that's needs to pop in your brain. Hey, I'm flying into something that is reduced visibility. NOTAMs, last thing on navigation. Need to check your NOTAMs. Need to know if you're going to be flying into if you're going to be flying near towers that are unlit or anything of the above. So last thing I want to talk about is landing illusions and kind of things that just kind of go along with landing illusions. So high intensity lights, like we were talking about on the pilot controlled lighting, high intensity is you're going to think you're lower than you are. And reverse effect for low intensity lights. For low intensity lights, you might think that you are higher than you are, and it could mess with your approaches. One of the favorite things I love to talk about are black hole approaches, because it blew my mind whenever I had one. A black hole approach, I won't read it because I'm already going too long, but a black hole approach is when you're going into a rural area and the only thing that's lit up is the runway or the airport. And it felt to me as if I was in space. I was in this voidless environment, and the only thing that existed was that runway and me, and I was traveling towards it. It was very awkward. So just be aware of that. Fixation. So I experienced this as well. So fixation is, if you stare at something long enough, it's going to appear that it's moving, even though it can be stationary, or that it is stationary. So if you're flying at night and you peer off into the distance and you see, like, let's say a blinking light of a tower, and the tower is not moving, but you are. So you stare at it long enough thinking, what is that? I mean, you were focused on it. It's going to appear that it's going to start moving. It's very interesting, and it's called an illusion for a reason, because it's not happening, but it's very interesting to me that it does that. And then, last thing I want to, actually two things. Last illusion I want to talk about is a false horizon. So a false horizon is exactly what it sounds like. It's that, you're peering out into the darkness, and you see something that you think is the horizon, and then you orientate yourself based on that horizon, and you're wrong for doing so because it's not. So what mine was, I was looking out, and there was a layer of clouds right above a city, and it covered up all the light from the city. But the light was shining behind the city, up above the clouds. So it appeared that there was a horizon right above those clouds. So I was looking at the top of those clouds, there was light behind it, but no light coming from in front of it. So it appeared as if the sun, I was glimpsing the last little bit of sunlight from the horizon, but it wasn't. It was a cloud bank, which was cool. I figured that out maybe 30 to 45 seconds after I looked at it, and I had experienced a false horizon illusion. Last thing I want to talk about is emergencies at night. So emergencies at night are pretty scary, or I've never experienced one, but I can imagine that they're pretty scary because you're already in this state of, I don't want to say panic, but in a stressed out state. And now you have less visibility than you did and less detail on the ground. So it's going to change things even in the best conditions. So let's say where I trained at TSTC, there was mostly just farmland outside of the city of Waco. So pretty much if you had to make an emergency landing, you could land anywhere. However, you would be landing if it was a new moon night and there was no moon, maybe it was cloudy and there was no stars. It's pitch black out there. You can't see the ground, and I can only imagine how scary that would be going into making an emergency landing in this huge black void that you can't tell if you're landing against crop rows, if you're going to landing into a fence, into trees, shrubs, a pond, animals. There's a lot of cows out there, a tractor, there's a lot of equipment out there, a house that's not lit up. So just be aware of that also in emergencies. When you're thinking about emergency procedures, also think about what happens if I have this and it's night, and just go through different scenarios. So I hope you enjoyed. I had fun teaching it. The last thing, actually, I'd keep lying. The last thing I want to talk about is that, as you can see, there is no model that I'm holding or anything, and I had a tough time thinking about, okay, what's going to be my can't think of it. My blankety blank, whatever, my model that I'm holding in my hands. My visual aid, thank you. Yes, visual aid. What would be my visual aid? I couldn't think of anything, so I cleared it with Mr. Pierce. Here's an experiment for you to do at home. You can test your rhodopsin production and your night vision. Okay, so while you're sitting in your living room, in your chair, doing a crossword puzzle, whatever, cover one eye with your palm right here, but keep this eye open, and for 5 minutes, and let it adjust to the dark. Okay, and then go in your bathroom. That's usually where it's going to be best. Bathroom, close the door, and look around. Turn the lights off. Now look around with this eye that has been exposed to brighter light and see how hard it's going to be to see. Now with the lights still off, cover this one and then uncover this one and see how much better you can see around. But don't uncover this one yet. Turn back on the lights for just a few seconds, maybe 1, 2, 3 seconds, 3 Mississippis, and then turn the lights right back off and see how that affected your night vision and your rhodopsin production. So, again, thank you for listening. I know that I've been long-winded, but it's a subject that we could go on for hours. So, thank you for listening.